So today I want to talk to you about the idea of having a carryover idea. I'm going to show you an example of what that actually looks like and then challenge you to use that in your work. I'm about to start a new sketchbook and I'm going to use that challenge from my new book and I will share it with you. So I'm going to start here. So what I mean by a carryover idea is you're always looking at the last thing that you made. So this is really my first page in this book that started to play with the idea of paper weaving within this sketchbook. So you're going to look at the last idea that you made and you want to think about what did you like about it, what did you learn from it, and what new questions came up while you were actually doing it. So for me, I ended up really liking this idea of gluing warp into my sketchbook and allowing me to weave. So that's what I took. And then I moved over to this one, but decided to be more free with it. So this was a very tight weave, all going straight across. So this one I played with there being a lot of openings, really letting the paper show through, going in different directions, and taking advantage of the fact that I could glue it in. And so it didn't need to be a tight weave to hold itself in place. So then I moved on to the next page, and what I really loved from the last one, I loved the black and white. I liked kind of the free flowing of it. So I did the same thing here, but I didn't glue them down. So what's kind of fun about this page is it has some structure to it, but I can go in and push these around, which is kind of playful and fun to me, and see what happens. Then I moved into this page, and this I started to explore what happened, because again, this was some free-flowing movement, if I didn't glue all of the strips down. So here, the strips are glued, the warp is glued on this side, but the rest of this is loose and really just held together by the weave, and then I played with a new weave pattern. We will come back to these tissue paper pages because they actually came in later, and I want to try and show you the order of this carryover thing. So then I moved on to this page, and I first did this weaving here, and it was kind of continuing with the idea of leaving the warp a little bit looser. And I wanted to play with more color. Color is not something I use very often, but I decided to kind of explore that. I liked when I turned the pages that warps that I hadn't totally glued down were actually becoming pages themselves. So I decided to do another warp on top of this last piece and make it so it really is its own page that's kind of free-flowing and turning, because that was something that was really kind of interesting and fascinating to me, and then I like being able to see how they interact with each other. So I had just used a lot of color, which is not something that I tend to do in my work, so I wanted to go in the opposite and just do white. I had actually planned on weaving this, but one, I really loved just kind of this texture that was created by the white on white and the different spacing in between. And then I really, really love, which is harder to see on here on the video, but when I turned the page, I loved the free-flowing movement of this, which disappears if I would weave it, so I decided not to weave that. Then moving on to here, and this is going to tie back to those other tracing paper pages. So I have a bunch of tracing paper, and I started to think about what would rubbings of these weavings look like. So I cut out this a frame in my book and made a rubbing of one of the paper weavings. Part of what I like about the frame is it lets the light kind of shine through, and that's always something that's been interesting to me about weaving, the little spaces that let light show through, and it looks different on each side. Because I thought that was kind of interesting, then I went back to these pages, and again, because I was starting to get more interested in layering because of that last piece, I put the tracing paper over top and did a rubbing of this page, and then this, I just kind of did a little tiny rubbing to see what that would start to look like. So you can also kind of go back and rework pieces. From this, I loved this window idea, so I made another window and just did a simple black weaving in that, but I'm still thinking about the layering here and seeing how these kind of like interact with each other when the light's able to shine through them. So I did another frame and decided to go really, really colorful so that the black and the color will interact with each other when they're on top of one another. And then because I loved that last page I did that was white on white, I decided to do the frame and then do another fully white paper weaving and see what that looked like. And again, this continues, it interacts with each other some, not as much because I made this this white one is a pretty tight weaving. So then I was really thinking about making shapes in them. So it's a little bit hard to see, but underneath this, there's a drawing, there's a circle and a grid pattern. And then I played with just following that same grid pattern into my weaving. I wasn't like totally in love with that, and at the same time I got these new watercolors. So then I started playing with what if I kind of painted a weaving and how do those colors actually interact with each other when they're over top of each other and layered. And because I was, from this one, thinking about weaving actual shapes, then over here I did some really free flow watercolor painting. Then I decided to pull out some of those shapes in drawing, and I was trying to think about, did I want to weave them, but I wasn't really sure yet, so I left this as it was, went back to the frame because that's something I was having a lot of fun with, and decided thus far I had done all paper weaving things. So now I made a warp with string within my frame, started to weave that with yarn. And the original plan, I was going to weave the whole thing, but what I found when I was turning the page is it kind of made this interesting thing going on when it overlapped the painting and I could see some of that. So I decided not to weave the whole thing because I liked that it could see through. So that is the concept of a carryover idea of kind of, this is also how you can quickly make a body of work that sort of looks like it all goes together, is start by making something that you like. Don't start with something that you don't like. That is not helpful. Start with something that you like. What did you like about it? How do you take that one thing but take it in a slightly different direction? And keep on going. So what I'm challenging myself, and I'm also challenging you, is to grab a sketchbook. And my next sketchbook I'm going to work on a little differently because the whole thing is going to be a carryover idea. And I personally, you don't have to go this far. You could choose 10 pages, 5 pages, 20 pages. My challenge to myself is going to be to go from the front of the book to the back of the book, kind of applying the carryover concept and seeing what happens through an entire sketchbook, but with that type of mindset.